Sweet. Okay, so where are we at? Yeah, so we're going to need... Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to create the controllers that are going to enable us to grab not the joints, I mean actually grab other objects so we can move these around. So the things that we're actually going to be using for animation. So we've got the functionality in the legs here, but at the moment we don't have the ability to grab something easily to be able to move it and animate it and keyframe it, etc. So let's create the controls. So first thing I'm going to do is create the box that's going to represent the foot. So I'm just going to use our box curve script. Again, that's in the project folder that I gave you guys. I'm going to snap that to the ankle, and then I'm going to start to reshape it around the foot. First thing I want to do is to turn off my ability to select IK handles or joints. So that's these two buttons here. So turn that off. So it just means all I'm doing is selecting the curve itself. Okay, so I'm just going to grab some vertices, snap the bottom ones down to the very bottom of, which is on the axis, that's good. Very bottom of the foot there. Bring this up to the front. And I want to keep these symmetrical as well. So I'm just using uniform scales and things just across axes so that it stays symmetrical. But anyway, I just want to shape it so that it's kind of a cage for the foot. And what I also want to do is make sure that this line back here matches up exactly, because I kind of snapped it to this point here. So all I've done is held down V and I've snapped it to that. And the same to the front here. And you'll see why in a second. Okay, maybe bring that out a bit. And you can also, as I've said, you can shape these exactly however you want them to look. You can make them look cool or whatever. But for me, just adding a box kind of just works. Yeah. So now, so that's our normal. That's the box. That's the curve or the controller. Sorry, that's going to control our whole foot. Now I need to create the other controllers that are going to be controlling the other parts of the foot. Okay, so I need one for the heel, I need one for the toe, and I need one for the ball. Okay, so the easiest way to do that is I'm actually going to draw them out using my EP curve tool. So in curves and surfaces, I'm going to grab my EP curve tool, make sure it's set to linear, and I'm going to jump into the top viewport. It's actually a bit confusing, so I'm just going to turn off my mesh. And now that I've done that, it's actually might be easier to do it from perspective. Yeah, so I can just turn off my mesh easily enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down C, and I'm going to drag to that corner there. I'm going to hold down C, drag to that corner there. Then I'm going to hold down X and kind of place these points. And then the last one, I'm going to end at the end there. They looks a little bit off, so I'm just going to go in and see if I can make it look even. Yeah, that's I'm happy with that. Then actually, easiest thing to do is I need to move the pivot of this one to this toe control to the joint here, and so just DV, bring it in, easy, and double check that when I rotate it, see how it rotates really nicely around that. That's why we wanted this front edge to be right on that line, so that when I rotate this, it actually kind of doesn't move away or anything like that. It actually seems like it should be there. So I'm going to duplicate this, Control D, snap it to the back, so that the heel, and rotate it around 180 degrees. And that should be exactly the same deal, right? So hopefully, yep, when I rotate it, works perfectly. I'm just going to slightly reshape this one, just so it looks a bit different from the toe, and maybe make this one a little bit pointier. so that's a little bit more toe-like. That's a little bit more heel-like. Yeah. And so it just means that it makes it a bit more obvious. It's not vital, but it kind of works. Okay, so the last one. So remember, I've got heel, I've got toe. The last one I need is the ball. So I've got to grab a circle. I'm going to snap that to the ball joint. I'm going to rotate it until it's up like this. And then, so it's in the right position, so I've snapped it. What I'm going to do now is turn the geometry back on and move it to a position where I'll be able to grab it easily. So somewhere like there, that's fine. And because I've moved it, my pivot's in the wrong place, so I'm just going to snap my pivot back to there. Back to that joint down there. Okay, easy. So when I test it, I'm just going to rotate it. Yeah, works fine. Right, so vital next step, do not forget, let's freeze our transforms. So I'm just going to select these controllers. Look how they've got all of these transforms in them. I want them to be zeroed out because they're starting from this fresh position here. So I'm going to grab them all and I'm going to go to freeze transforms. So if I select them all, they should be zeroed out. Perfect. Okay. So important thing I need to do as well is to rename. So this box is going to be CTRL left foot foo. Then I've got heel, toe, and ball. So I'm just going to use my rename script. So CTRL left heel, CTRL left toe, and CTRL left ball. So yeah, double checking. Oh, baller 101. And that's actually going to be called toe point because that's actually what the controller is doing. It's allowing us to give the character a toe point. And this is going to be ball lift. So it lifts up the rest of the leg around the ball. So okay, we've got heel, we've got toe, we've got ball lift, we've got toe point, and we've got foot. Okay. So next step, let's set up our parenting. So when I move this foot around, I want all these other controllers to follow. So the order of our parenting is the same order as our joint driver, right? So remember our joint driver, everything moves off the heel. So what we want is we want to start with, we look at it this way. So the smallest one, so the one the lowest in the hierarchy, is going to be the one furthest along, which is our ball control here. So that is going to be parented to our toe. Our toe is going to be parented to our heel. And our heel is going to be parented to the foot control. So when we grab our foot control, you can see that it kind of moves around the way we want it to. When you rotate the heel, the other two go with it, exactly the way we want. Rotate the toe, the ball goes, exactly what we want. When I go the ball, nothing happens. Oh, sorry, nothing goes with it. Perfect. So now that we've got those set up, and they're symmetrical, it's quite easy. Just going to double check my pivots. Yeah. I'm going to duplicate those controllers and then snap them across the other side. So really simple. Then I'm just going to rename quickly because of course that's now the right hand side. So I've got oops. So I should have two sets of controllers that kind of, yeah, look correct. Awesome. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping because we're getting a little bit, I mean, it doesn't look that messy yet, but it can always get on top of us. So I'm going to put everything in its correct position. So I'm going to go the main joint chain, I'm going to chuck in joints. My IK handles, going to put in IKs. My joint drivers, I'm going to put in Even though they're joints, they're not part of the main joint chain, which is the only thing that goes in our joints, in our joints group. It's actually going to go into to transform to hide. There we go. And I'm going to put my control groups, my controllers in the control objects. There we go. So now it's nice and clean again. So let's attach all of this so that we can actually get some use out of it, because still at the moment it's not we're not actually doing much with it, right? The first thing I need to do, I just had a look, I need to make sure I've frozen the transforms of the controllers on the right hand side. Okay, awesome. So let's have a think about what we want to do. We want this heel controller to control the orientation of this heel, the heel of the driver here. So I'm going to grab my heel, grab the joint driver, go constrain, orient constrain. So hopefully if I grab that, yep, it's working well. So toe to the joint driver toe, constrain, orient constrain. Grab my ball, or my ball lift, the joint driver ball, constrain, orient constrain. So if you have a look, we've got that controlling that, got the toe controlling the toe point, and I've got the ball controlling the ball lift. So quickly to the other side, let's do it quickly. Bam, bam, and bam. And the way I did that so quickly was I just pressed G, because G just repeats the last thing you did, which was the orient constraint. So I just got the selection in the correct order and did it. Okay. But we just don't have any movement here yet, right? So, okay, I got a little bit confused there for a second, but so we created the group, and so the group is what is going to kind of give us the ability to move this object around without having to worry about its other constraints, right? So I'm just gonna get rid of that point constraint quickly. So I'm going to select the main foot control, then I'm going to select the group that we just created, and I'm going to give it a parent constraint. So you can see when we rotate, the whole thing is rotating around the ankle, which is exactly what we want. So because we want the whole foot to be rotating around the ankle like that, but we still want to, I mean, you're never going to have a heel on the side like that, but when the foot is on the ground, we still want the ability to rotate these parts of the rig to work. Okay. So again, I'll go through it on this side to get it to work properly. So you can see that when we rotate the foot, it's not doing what we want. What I want to do is I want to grab the joint driver. I'm going to Control G, which creates a group. We go group joint drive X form. So that gives me extra transformation. And I'm going to select the controller, then I'm going to select the group, and I'm going to need to change the point, the pivot of the group. Where are we? There we go. So I'm going to snap the pivot to the ankle. I'm going to grab my foot controller. I'm going to grab the group. Then I'm going to parent constrain. So hopefully that's worked, and it has. Nice. So now you can see that we've got two foot controls that are working with our legs. Okay. So let's quickly skin up the legs, which means that we can actually see this better. So I'm going to hide. So remember how we put the things in the to hide group up here? That means that when I hide them, they're gone because I don't need them anymore, right? I don't even need to see them. Everything else is working. And I'm also going to hide the IKs. Don't need to see them either. And all I need to see is my geometry, which I've made editable now. Here's my geometry and the bound joints. So the BN joints that I'm going to be binding things to. Okay, so let's just go through and bind as we want. So I'm going to open up my bind dialog, make sure my settings are correct, which are selected joints, closest distance, classic linear, only one influence because I'm just, each piece of geometry, I only want one joint affecting it. So max influences is there. And so I'm just going to select the geometry I want to go for each joint. So this toe geometry here, I'm going to bind it to that joint. The base here and here, I'm going to bind to the ankle joint. The ankle itself, I'm going to go to the ankle joint as well. Then I'm going to do this leg armor, go up here, this, the knee, go to the knee, upper leg, going to the hip, and I work my way down the other side too. So there we go. Okay, so hopefully, if I move this around now, oh, I must have, I didn't skin something correctly there, so I didn't skin this correctly. So I'm just going to go to skin, unbind skin, and then I'm going to skin it to the right joint. So grab that one, and there we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so everything's working. Let's double check. Nice. Let's grab you, even nicer. Grab the heel, perfect, and yeah, and I can, again, I can move my foot around. Now it's kind of, yeah, cool. And because we froze the transforms and everything worked out nicely, remember with the controllers, we can just zero them out, and that works. So let's double check this side as well. Yep, perfect. There you go. So that's our legs. So breezing through, let's start stepping up, going up the body. So I've got my root here. I'm gonna need to create a controller that's going to control the position and the rotation of my hips. So I'm just going to create another box curve, snap it to the to my root joint. I'm going to kind of scale it up. Maybe, yeah, just make it a little bit. Kind of. Let's don't select joints again. Again, so it's not super pretty, but at least it gives us something to grab when we're trying to grab something. Okay. Okay, so here are my, yeah, that's nice. So I'm just going to freeze those transforms. Bam. I'm going to grab the control, which I'm going to rename CTRL hips. I'm going to grab the control, grab the root. Ooh, not the geometry. Oh, I need to turn back on joint selection. Okay, so grab that, then the root, and I'm going to parent constrain. So we can rotate it now, we can move it around now. And so we've got this. Nice, our legs are working. So I'll just bind that piece of geometry to there. So I've got that kind of belt slash whatever it is. And now we need to start creating joints up the middle, up the top here. So we're going to finish the spine. So let's just jump into the front view. Grab the joint tool. Yeah, I just want to be able to see my joints through it. I'm going to use the X snap, so I'm snapping to grid points. I'm going to create one, which is going to be my abs around here. Press enter. I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to move it up to be the center of the chest. About there. Duplicate that. It's going to be the base of the neck, which is kind of going to be below where the head starts, but it's not, obviously doesn't have a very long neck. We're not going to bind in geometry to it. It just means that we can actually move, just create controllers and move the geometry around correctly. I'm going to duplicate it again, and I'm going to move it to the base of the helmet, or the head. Duplicate that, and go to the very top. So that's the head end there. So, hopefully, all of these are vertical, which is, I mean, they're above each other. But I want them to be above the root joint, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my top view. They're over here, and I'm going to snap them in the x-axis, holding V to the top, to the position of the root joint, just so all of the joints in my spine are above each other. Okay, easy. Now, we don't have to worry about orientation with these joints because they're oriented to the world, right? Because they're not at any weird angles, not really doing anything. So if we have a look at the local rotation axis, it's completely fine, right? And they're all going to be consistent as well because we didn't actually change anything. So you can see Y is going up, X to the side, Z coming out. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's perfectly fine. If we want to make the whole rig a bit more consistent, we can actually, because remember, if we have a look, our main axis going down the chain is actually our x-axis. And it's mirrored, so that's why it's going backwards, but it's still the same. So it is still x going, it's the x-axis is still the one determining what the direction of our chain actually is. So even though it's reversed, it's not, there's nothing wrong with that. But you can still see our primary axis is the x-axis. So if I want to make that the same, going all the way to the top of our head, first thing I could do is I need to actually unparent these, our hips, because I don't want them to be influenced by any joint orienting we do up here. And then I'm going to parent all these joints. So U to U, U to U, U to U, U to U, and U to U. So if I want to make them have the primary axis X, I can just go back, use the same settings we had, and just go orient. So what that should have done is, which it hasn't, why hasn't it done that? So it has for you guys, but it hasn't done it for you. So let's just do that manually then, that's fine. So I just want them to match. So let's get that root, zero out. That's because we've got a constraint on it already. It doesn't matter then. I'm just going to orient these to the world. And so we go orient joint to world, apply. And it doesn't really matter that we don't have the same primary axis. Okay, so parent you to you. And parent both of you guys to you guys. And so everything's back to normal. Okay, just going to turn off my local rotation axes here. There you go. Now, we need a couple more controllers along as we go up. We need one controller to determine the rotation of the abs, so we're kind of rotating around that center point. And we want another controller to do the chest itself. And also, of course, we want one to do the head. So I'm just going to, for the abs, I'm just going to use a circle. I'm going to snap it to that middle point there. Scale it up. Or actually, no, I will use a box curve, so it kind of matches with the others. So I'm just going to create a box curve, snap it, scale it, because I kind of want it to look like it's going up together with this one. So I'm just going to play around with these as well. I'm actually going to snap these curve points here to the corners of this new controller I've created, just because it'll look nicer if they match up. What are we doing? There we go. Cool. And then now that they're at the right position that way, I'm just going to pull them down a bit. There we go. So it means that if I scale this up, I've kind of got this cage that's going to help us or look a little bit better when we're animating, that kind of thing. Okay, cool. Now, so I'm just going to duplicate this control curve controller, and so create a new one for the chest. I'm just going to push and pull it again. And yeah, for me that's good enough. Doesn't actually look that. Oh, maybe I'll scale them out a little bit. Yeah, I can scale you out a bit too. Yeah, it doesn't look the best in the world, but it still gives us what we want. Okay, so let's rename and freeze transform these boys. So I'm gonna freeze transforms. I'm going to rename this. So this is going to be CTRL abs, and this is CTRL chest. Chest. And the last one we need is for the helmet here. So there's another kind of nice way to create control curves, ones that kind of match a little bit nicer with your object. So I'm just going to isolate the helmet here. So that's just control 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a curve from the geometry on the helmet. All right, so I'm just going to start by selecting a few, selecting an edge loop. I'm going to go to modify, convert polygon edges to curve. Right, so you can see that I'm just going to do that a few more times. So I'm going to get a cage, which is going to kind of represent which is going to represent a little bit more of what our object actually looks like. So I don't actually like that one. I'm going to keep that the way it is. I'm going to delete some of these because I don't need them all. And this is just a visual thing. I mean, it's a purely visual thing. So, so I want one that way. Yep, modify, convert, polygon edges to curve. And then I want one around the grill here as well. So hopefully that's probably given us enough. Yeah, not too bad. Maybe I probably want some around the base as well. Yeah, that'll work. Modify, convert. There we go. It's a little bit noisy, but it really doesn't matter to me. Okay, so the way we actually use this is because obviously they're all individual curves right now. We can actually make them into one curve, and it's not through any like crazy Illustrator stuff. It's I'll just actually make this nicer. We can actually just literally make them the same object. So group them all under the same shape node. You guys wouldn't have done this before, but it's fine. There's what I've got is in your project folder, in the scripts folder, you've got a script called object parent or curve parent. And what that enables us to do is actually do a kind of to add different curves under the same parent, but it's not really a group or anything like that. It actually makes that curve the same curve. So I'll show you how it works in a second. So I'm just going to freeze transforms, make all these work. Then I'm going to rename them all. So I'm going to grab them, rename script. So they're going to be CTRL head 01. And I'm actually going to use the same name for all of them. So you can see it's counting up. But in the end, we're only going to have one, so it's okay. So I'm going to see, so this top one, I'm going to parent all of these curves underneath this main shape up here. So I'm going to grab one of them. I'm going to actually copy the name of this curve here, control head. And I'm going to click on my curve parent tool. Okay, so I'm going to grab one of the other curves, click my curve parent, then copy in, actually no, it's on, yeah, okay, that's fine. Then copy in my head and then press apply. So I'm going to keep doing that. So each time I do that, one of these is actually going to disappear. So you can see they're disappearing. But that's good because it means that they're actually being parented underneath this, this curve here. There we go, and last one. Done. So now I've got something that is one curve. So whenever I select it, it's just one thing. And it actually looks a lot more, it looks more like the actual curve that or the actual object that it's going to be controlling. Okay. So there we go. We've got our control for the head. Let's just quickly do our constraints for those new controllers we created. So this abs one is going to be controlling the rotation, so the orientation of my abs here, because you don't really move around that point. It's just going to be the orientation. I'm going to grab that control, double check that transforms are frozen. They are. Grab the control, then grab the joint, go constrain, orient. Same for the chest. Actually, no, the chest is going to be a parent constraint. So chest to chest, constrain parent, because I do actually want to be able to move, because you can move your chest around slightly, right? Then I want the head to control the head joint, and so that's going to be, there might be a little bit of movement in the head, right? So actually first I need to snap the pivot to the correct pivot. So snap the pivot to the joint, freeze the transforms because I've just noticed my transforms aren't frozen. There we go, and I'm going to select that, select the joint, which is my, oh, I haven't renamed them yet. Oh, whoops, I forgot to rename them. So that is my head joint, and I'm going to add another parent constraint. So constrain parent. Then I need to set up my parenting order again. So the head is going to be parented to the chest, chest to the abs, abs to the waist. So it means that right now, when we rotate it, hopefully all of this is going to be working for us, right? Yeah. Yeah, cool. And I'm just going to dump my hips into the my control objects group, so everything is nice and neat. And the final thing we'll do is we'll set up we'll just skin these objects. Okay, so I'm going to skin this to the root joint, so the abs to the root. Actually, is that right? Yeah, it has to be, doesn't it? So skin, bind skin. The chest is going to go to the chest. The head and all its other objects. So let's find it and select all the objects. That's going to be bound to. They're going to be bound to the head. Okay. And then the backpack here is going to be bound to the chest. Last thing we do, let's rename these. Just going to find them. Okay, so this one is bam, 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 bam. Select them. My renaming script. So it's bn abs 01, bn chest 01, bn neck 01, bn head 01, and then bn head end 01. So we double check, and yep, all of them work. Let's double check this. All the skinning works. Awesome. And yeah, I'll pause it there. I'll start again in a bit.